Sitting on the edge of the sidewalk, I looked up at the towering skyscrapers, wondering how many of those people had ever noticed me. The cold wind stung my face, but it wasn't the cold that bothered me. It was the isolation, the feeling of being invisible, as if I no longer existed in the world that kept spinning without me. I had spent years in this place. No home, no warmth, just survival. My clothes were ragged, and my stomach growled with hunger. I watched as people hurried by, too busy to spare a glance, too caught up in their own lives to see the man sitting on the pavement. Then, I saw him. Elon Musk, a man who had changed the world. I had seen him on TV, read about his innovations, and wondered how someone could reach such heights. Yet here he was, walking past me like anyone else. My heart raced. This was it, the moment I'd been waiting for, or maybe the moment that would prove my worth to the world. I swallowed my pride, took a deep breath, and asked, "Can you give me $1?" There was a pause. The world seemed to freeze. I could see the flicker of hesitation in his eyes. What would he say? What would he do? The answer I got would shock me, change everything I thought I knew about humanity, and alter the course of my life forever. 8. John had never imagined his life would end up this way. He wasn't born into poverty, nor did he come from a broken home. His childhood was filled with laughter, warmth, and dreams of a future that seemed so bright. But somewhere along the way, things changed. One bad decision, one twist of fate, and the life he had known began to unravel. He used to be a man of ambition. A job in tech had promised stability, a home, a future. But that world slipped through his fingers as addiction took hold, and he lost everything. The job, the apartment, the friends. He found himself on the streets, in a city that never stopped moving, but seemed to have forgotten him entirely. His days became a blur of survival, finding food, avoiding danger, and hoping for a glimmer of kindness from someone, anyone. The people around him were indifferent. They didn't know him. To them, he was just another face in the crowd, another beggar. Yet, inside, John wasn't just surviving. He was searching for a way to regain what he had lost, to prove that he was still capable of something more. He wasn't ready to accept that this was his life now. Then there was Elon Musk, an icon of success, innovation, and wealth. John had followed his career from the very beginning. He admired how Musk had pushed the boundaries of what was possible. SpaceX, Tesla, Neuralink. Each achievement seemed like a world away from the world John inhabited. He had always dreamed of meeting someone like him, someone who could offer hope, a chance, or even just a moment of recognition. But John didn't see Musk as just a billionaire. To him, Musk symbolized what was still possible for someone like him. If Musk could rise from humble beginnings to change the world, then why couldn't John? But deep inside, John feared the harsh reality of his situation. What if he was too far gone? What if asking someone like Musk for help was just another sign of how low he had sunk? The fear gnawed at him, threatening to keep him silent, to stop him from asking. But in that moment, sitting on the sidewalk, with the cold pressing against his bones, the question slipped out. The stakes were high. John wasn't just asking for money. He was asking for a lifeline, a connection, a sign that the world hadn't completely forgotten him. And then there was Elon Musk. From the outside, Musk appeared untouchable, someone who had everything: wealth, influence, power. But Musk, too, was a man with his own struggles. His success didn't erase the pressure he faced, the loneliness that came with being in the public eye, the constant drive to outdo himself, to push further. Musk was a visionary, but even visionaries had their vulnerabilities. He didn't need the money, of course. $1 would mean nothing to him. But how would he react to the raw vulnerability of a man asking for help? Would he see John as just another homeless face, a victim of circumstance, or would he see something more? As John watched him approach, the silence between them stretched thin. There was something electric in the air, something that hinted at the possibility of both a connection and a fracture. Would Musk dismiss him as he had seen others do before, or would he surprise him with something more? The tension was palpable, and as the world moved on around them, it was as though time stood still. Something was about to happen, something neither of them could have expected. And for both John and Musk, the consequences of this moment would ripple out far beyond that simple exchange. What happened next would leave them both changed forever. The air grew colder as John sat on the pavement, watching Elon Musk draw nearer. The bustling city around them seemed to blur as everything narrowed to this one moment. The question he had asked, the answer he was about to receive. John's heart raced, his breath catching in his throat, not from the cold, but from the enormity of the moment. Elon paused in front of him, their eyes locking. For a brief second, the crowd around them seemed to disappear. Time stretched, each passing second laden with unspoken words, a clash of two very different worlds. John's pulse pounded in his ears as he waited for the response that would shape his future. Musk took a deep breath, as if considering something far more profound than a simple request for money. His face betrayed no emotion, but John could feel a tension rising between them, an invisible barrier that separated them, yet connected them in an unspoken way. "I've been where you are," Musk said, his voice unexpectedly soft. "But $1 won't fix what's broken." The words hung in the air, as John's stomach sank. Was this it? Was he about to be dismissed just like the rest of the world had dismissed him? But then, something unexpected happened. Musk didn't just walk away. Instead, he knelt beside John. The crowd around them had begun to notice, and a few people stopped to watch. Musk's eyes softened, almost as if he saw something in John that no one else did. A fellow human being, not a beggar, not a failure, but someone who deserved a chance. "Do you want to change your life?" Musk asked, his voice low but earnest. John's breath caught. His mind raced. Could this be real? Was this a cruel joke? Or was there a chance for him to finally escape the depths of despair? The hope surged within him, faster than he could control. I want more than just money," John replied, his voice trembling. "I want to feel human again. I want a chance, just one chance to show that I'm not just some homeless guy." Musk nodded slowly, as though processing the weight of the words. There was a flicker of something in his eyes, a decision forming. He stood up, looking around at the growing crowd, and John could feel the eyes of the onlookers, some skeptical, some curious, all watching. Suddenly, the unexpected occurred. A tall man in a suit, part of Musk's entourage, appeared from the crowd, his face tense with concern. He whispered something in Musk's ear, something that made Musk's expression harden. For a brief moment, the warmth that had filled the interaction with John seemed to vanish, replaced by the cold steel of a corporate world that had no place for the kind of vulnerability John had shown. "Mr. Musk, we need to leave now. The event starts in 5 minutes, the man said urgently. Musk looked torn, but he nodded. With one last glance at John, he turned, following the man away from the scene. For a moment, John felt a pang of betrayal, a sting that made his stomach churn. Had he been nothing more than a momentary distraction? Another fleeting encounter in the life of a billionaire? Just as he began to sink back into despair, the crowd began to murmur. John turned his head, following their gazes, and saw the same man in the suit returning, his expression now filled with an unsettling coldness. "Don't listen to him," the man sneered, his words sharp and mocking. "You think Musk cares about a homeless person like you? He was just playing the part for the cameras. It's all a show. Do you really think he'd offer you anything more than a fleeting moment of sympathy?" John's breath faltered. His mind whirled, trying to make sense of the confusion, of the hope that had flickered only to be dashed. He looked toward Musk, who had stopped but didn't look back. Was the man in the suit right? Was this all just a performance? But then, out of nowhere, the scene shifted again. Musk returned, stepping toward John with purpose. He wasn't followed by the entourage, and the crowd had dispersed, leaving the two of them in a strange, silent bubble. John looked up, searching Musk's face, trying to read the truth. Musk's voice was firm, but this time, there was something else in it, a depth, a realness that hadn't been there before. "I'm sorry for what just happened. That wasn't right." John's eyes widened. This wasn't what he expected. The apology didn't make things right, but it made him wonder, had Musk really cared, or was he being manipulated by forces he couldn't control? "I want to help you, but it's not going to be easy," Musk continued. "I'm offering you a chance to work with my team, to get off the streets, but you'll have to prove you're ready. It's not just about survival anymore. It's about rebuilding everything. Do you understand? John's heart pounded. His entire world seemed to tilt. This was the opportunity he had longed for. But a deep fear took root inside him. Was he ready for this? Was he strong enough to rebuild himself? To leave the life he had known behind? The weight of the decision pressed down on him. He could take this chance, but it would mean leaving behind everything, facing his fears, and stepping into a world that seemed foreign, cold, and filled with impossible expectations. Are you ready? Musk asked, his eyes piercing through John's uncertainty. In that moment, everything came to a head. John realized that this wasn't just about $1 anymore. It was about redemption. And the real question wasn't whether Musk would offer him a hand. It was whether he could take it. The days that followed were a blur of strange new beginnings. John had moved into a small, modest apartment in the city, a place that smelled faintly of fresh paint, a stark contrast to the stench of the streets he had come from. Musk's offer was a lifeline, one that he clung to with both hands. He worked tirelessly at the tech firm, taking on tasks no one else would, sorting through piles of paperwork, answering emails, and making coffee for people who didn't even acknowledge him. At first, John felt like a ghost in the office, invisible. But there were moments of clarity, moments when he caught glimpses of the man he used to be, the man who had once dreamed of a future filled with success and ambition. He had a purpose now, a goal. He was building something again. But the longer he worked alongside Musk's team, the more he began to see cracks in the veneer. The smile that had been extended to him, the one that had made him believe that maybe, just maybe, he was worth something, was starting to feel like a mask. Musk had been kind, but his kindness was distant, transactional. There was no personal connection, no bond. It was as if he were helping John not because he truly cared, but because it was a PR move, part of a greater narrative Musk had been crafting all along. One day, John found himself sitting in the break room, scrolling through his phone, when an unexpected headline caught his eye: Elon Musk's new homeless initiative, the billionaire's latest PR stunt. His heart sank as he read through the article. The words jumped off the screen, each one sinking deeper into his chest. It wasn't just an initiative. It was a carefully crafted media campaign designed to elevate Musk's image, to show the world that he was giving back. John felt sick. The weight of the betrayal hit him like a freight train. This wasn't charity. It was a spectacle. He was nothing more than a pawn in Musk's carefully orchestrated game, a symbol of the success Musk could claim to have helped. As the truth settled in, the tension between John and his surroundings grew unbearable. Every time he passed Musk in the hall, every time he was asked to do something that seemed trivial or beneath him, a gnawing feeling of resentment bubbled up. Musk had made him feel like he was part of something meaningful, but now it was clear that John had never been more than a token. He had been used to further Musk's narrative, his image. The emotional weight of the discovery crushed John's spirit. He had believed in the possibility of a new life, a chance to rebuild. But now, the ground beneath him felt like it was slipping away. He was just a piece in a game he hadn't even realized he was playing. But the true turning point came one afternoon, when John found himself in Musk's office. He had been summoned there, unsure of what to expect. As he entered, Musk was sitting behind his desk, his eyes locked on a series of documents in front of him. He looked up, almost as if startled by John's presence. "John, I've been thinking," Musk began, his voice cool and impersonal. "We need to talk about your next steps. I'm afraid this whole homeless initiative thing isn't working out the way I planned. We're not getting the results I expected, and frankly, it's becoming a distraction. You need to decide. Are you going to step up and contribute to the company's goals, or are you going to go back to the streets where you came from?" The word struck John like a slap in the face. Musk wasn't offering him a chance to stay or a path forward. He was giving him an ultimatum. The kindness, the generosity, the promise of a fresh start. Everything had been a lie, a means to an end. John's mind raced as anger surged through him. He had been played. Every moment of warmth, every word of encouragement Musk had offered, had been nothing more than a manipulation to further his own agenda. This wasn't a second chance. This was just another step in a game Musk was playing, one where John was never meant to win. For the first time in months, John felt the walls closing in on him again. The old feelings of inadequacy, of being less than, of being nothing, came rushing back. He had tried so hard to believe in this new reality, to embrace the chance he'd been given. But now, as the truth crashed down around him, John realized that he had never truly been part of Musk's world. As the silence stretched between them, Musk shifted uncomfortably, sensing the growing tension. He didn't understand the weight of his words, the damage they were doing. John could see it in his eyes. A hint of confusion, a flicker of irritation, but no empathy, no recognition of the pain he had caused. John stood up, his hands shaking. The decision had been made for him. There was no future here, no hope. He walked out of Musk's office, leaving behind the very thing he had worked so hard to build. The world outside felt colder now, harsher. He had been given a taste of something better, only to have it ripped away, leaving him with nothing but the bitterness of betrayal. As he walked through the city streets, the realization hit him. This wasn't just about Musk. It was about him, about his own choices, his own will to rise above everything that had held him back. The path ahead was unclear, but John knew one thing for sure. He would no longer be anyone's pawn. The cold wind cut through the streets like a blade as John stood in front of the grand building that housed the tech empire he had once thought would offer him salvation. His breath clouded in the frigid air, mingling with the uncertainty that churned in his chest. It was a strange feeling, this mix of rage and resolve. He had walked out of Musk's office days ago, but the weight of the betrayal lingered in every step he took, like a shadow he couldn't shake. His decision had been made. He would no longer be manipulated, no longer be a pawn in someone else's game. John had a plan, and it was time to put it into motion. As he strode into the building, the usual hum of activity felt alien now. Empty chatter, the clinking of coffee cups, the rush of footsteps. The very place that had once felt like his second chance now felt like a trap. Each face he passed was a reminder of the false promises, the hollow gestures. No one seemed to notice his presence, but it no longer mattered. His eyes were set on the prize, Musk's office. He arrived at the door. His heart hammered in his chest. The moment of truth had arrived. The door swung open. Inside, Musk was at his desk, his back turned, focused on something on his screen. He didn't even look up as John entered. "John," Musk said, his voice lacking warmth, as if he was expecting him. "I thought you'd be gone by now. Are you here to apologize? To beg for your job back?" There was a smugness in his tone, as if this was a game to him, a trivial moment in his day. John stood there for a beat, letting the words settle in. A chill ran through him, but this time, it wasn't fear. It was something deeper, something darker. Anger, righteous anger. The anger of a man who had been used, manipulated, tossed aside. "No, Musk," John said, his voice low but firm. "I'm not here to apologize. I'm here to tell you that I'm done." Musk looked up, his expression momentarily flickering with confusion. "What are you talking about? You're not going anywhere. I gave you a chance, and you're going to take it." John shook his head, the final pieces of his decision falling into place. "You didn't give me a chance. You gave me a lie. You gave me a stage to play your part, to make you look good. You never cared about me. It was never about helping me. It was about your image, and I see that now." Musk stood, his face hardening as the tension in the room thickened. "You think you know everything? You think you know me? You have no idea the kind of world I'm dealing with. This was never personal, John. This was business. And you're just a footnote in that." The words hit John like a slap in the face. The coldness in Musk's eyes, the arrogance in his posture. It was all too much. He had wanted to believe in Musk's vision, to believe that maybe there was a way out of the darkness for him. But now, he realized how hollow those dreams were. "No, Musk," John said, his voice growing louder now, his fury bubbling to the surface. "I'm not a footnote. I'm a person. I'm not some charity case you can flaunt to the world. I'm not just a tool for you to use. You can't buy me. You can't control me. And you know what? I'm not going to let you get away with this. You think you've won, but you haven't. Not yet." Musk's face flushed with anger. He took a step forward, his fists clenched. "You're nothing without me, John. I made you. I gave you this opportunity, and you think you can walk away from it? You have no idea what you're throwing away." John stepped closer, matching his intensity. "I don't need you, Musk. I don't need your money, your fame, or your promises. I've been to hell and back, and I'll be damned if I let you drag me back into it. You're not the savior you think you are. You're just another man with too much power, too much pride, and no idea how to use it for good." The silence that followed was suffocating. Musk's face twitched, and for a moment, John thought he might lash out. But instead, Musk let out a sharp laugh, one that was hollow, devoid of any real amusement. "You're naive, John," Musk said, his voice dangerously calm. "You think you've won? You think you've beaten me? You're not even in my league. You're just a momentary distraction in my empire. And when you realize that, it'll be too late." John's heart pounded in his chest, but he stood tall, unwavering. He wasn't afraid anymore. This was the moment that would define him. "You're wrong, Musk," John said, his voice steady. "I'm not a distraction. I'm the proof that people like you can't win forever. Your empire of lies. It's all going to come crashing down. And when it does, I'll be here to watch." John turned and walked out of the office, the weight of the confrontation settling in his chest. His steps were slow, deliberate, but inside, his pulse raced with a newfound sense of freedom. The world outside was vast, full of unknowns, but for the first time in a long while, John felt like he was in control of his own fate. No more games, no more lies. He was done. The sun was setting, casting a soft golden glow over the city as John stood on the rooftop, staring out at the horizon. The world seemed quieter now, the chaos of the past few days fading into the background as he took in the stillness. His mind was a whirl of thoughts. He had faced Musk, had confronted the very man who had once held his future in his hands, and now, he was free. But freedom felt different than he had imagined. It wasn't the rush of victory or the satisfaction of a fight well fought. It was a quiet kind of weight, one that settled in his chest, heavy with the realization of what he had lost. The confrontation had been necessary. He knew that. But as he stood there, the city stretching out beneath him, a feeling of emptiness lingered. What did it all mean? Really? He had taken down the man who had wronged him, but had he truly won? Or was he simply another pawn in a game far bigger than himself? "John?" A voice broke through his thoughts. He turned, and there she was, Sarah, the woman who had stood by him through it all. Her face was soft, yet there was an intensity in her eyes, a kind of understanding that went deeper than words. "I'm here," she said, stepping closer. Her presence, her calmness, grounded him in a way nothing else could. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply stood there, side by side, watching the city below, the weight of everything hanging between them. John thought back to the moment when he had walked out of Musk's office. That was the moment that had defined everything. It had been painful, brutal even, but it had also been freeing. The facade had shattered, and in its place, something raw and real had emerged. "I thought I would feel different," John finally admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded, her gaze soft. "You will. But it's not about feeling different. It's about what you do now. You've got a chance to rebuild, to start again. And this time, you do it on your terms." John looked at her, his mind racing. She was right, of course. He had spent so long chasing after a dream that had never truly been his. Musk's world, the fame, the money, it had all been a distraction. The real journey, the real growth, came from within. He thought about the people he had met along the way, the ones who had been there for him when everything else seemed lost. They had seen him for who he truly was, not who he pretended to be. And maybe that was the key to everything, being true to himself. "Do you think I can make it?" John asked, his voice tinged with uncertainty. Sarah smiled, a quiet confidence in her eyes. "I know you can. You've already taken the hardest step." As they stood there together, the last rays of sunlight faded behind the horizon, signaling the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. John wasn't sure where the path ahead would lead, but for the first time in a long while, he was okay with that. The unknown didn't feel as terrifying anymore. He had learned to trust himself, to believe in his own strength, and that was enough. But even as the story seemed to close, there was still a lingering question. What had Musk learned from all of this? Had he been humbled, or had he simply been plotting his next move? As much as John had freed himself from the web Musk had spun around him, there was no denying the pull of that world. It was a world of power, of influence, of manipulation. And as long as that world existed, it would continue to shape the lives of people like John, people who dared to challenge it. The screen faded to black, the silence heavy with unanswered questions, and the audience was left with a quiet reflection. In the end, was the fight worth it? Did it lead to redemption? Or was it just another chapter in a story that never truly ended? The lingering question remained, but one thing was clear. John had found his voice, and that, in itself, was a victory. As the dust settles and the story reaches its conclusion, we are left with more than just the memories of what transpired. The twists, the betrayals, and the choices made by John and those around him serve as a mirror to our own lives. In the end, the question isn't just about what happened. It's about what we would have done in their place. John's journey wasn't just about confronting a powerful figure or proving a point. It was about discovering who he truly was when everything was stripped away. The moral here is simple yet profound. Sometimes, we have to challenge the systems around us, face the consequences of our actions, and confront uncomfortable truths. But in doing so, we also discover what we're made of. The real lesson? That the price of freedom is never as clear as we think. It's never just about money or status. Sometimes, the cost comes in the form of personal sacrifice, loss of innocence, or even the relationships we hold dear. John had to lose so much to gain back his sense of self. It makes you wonder, how far would you be willing to go to take control of your own destiny? If you were in John's shoes, what would you have done? Would you have confronted Musk head-on? Or would you have stayed in the shadows, letting life pass you by? And if you had to choose between loyalty and self-preservation, what would your decision be? The story of John reminds us that loyalty, ambition, and freedom all come at a price. But the question remains, is it ever worth it? What would you risk for the sake of your own truth? Take a moment to reflect on the choices we make in our own lives. Are we willing to sacrifice what's comfortable for the chance to truly be free? As you go about your day, think about the price of your own decisions. Are they leading you to where you want to go? Or are you letting someone else control your path? The journey is never easy, but perhaps it's only through the hardest decisions that we discover who we really are. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more thought-provoking content. What would you have done in John's position? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below.